On a cool Monday morning, Ethan Walker stepped out of his townhouse carrying a travel mug of coffee and the keys to his silver sedan. His parking space, Space 18, had been part of his property since he purchased the home 9 years earlier. It was listed in his closing documents, shown on the subdivision plat, and even marked on the HOA map distributed to every homeowner. Except this morning. The space was empty. At first, Ethan assumed someone had borrowed the spot by mistake. Then he noticed something lying on the asphalt. A few broken pieces of green safety glass. His stomach tightened. He looked left. Then right. His car was gone. A neighbor walking his dog slowed down. "Looking for your car?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, have you seen it?" The neighbor pointed toward the front entrance. "Tow truck came about an hour ago. They said the HOA ordered it." Ethan frowned. "The HOA?" The man shrugged. "I figured they had called you first." "They didn't." Ethan immediately called the HOA management office. After waiting several minutes, a receptionist answered. "Community Management Services. How may I help you?" "My car has been towed." She asked for his address. A few seconds later, she replied. "According to our records, your vehicle was parked in a restricted HOA space." Ethan stared at his own driveway. "Restricted?" "Yes. That's my assigned parking space." "I'm sorry, sir. You'll need to discuss that with the board president." "And who is that?" "Melissa Grant." 2 hours later, Ethan stood inside the HOA office across from Melissa. She barely looked up from the papers on her desk. "Mr. Walker. You had my car towed. It was parked in an HOA-controlled space." "No. It was parked in my space." Melissa calmly slid a printed map across the desk. A red circle marked Space 18. "According to this map, the space belongs to the association." Ethan looked at it carefully. Something wasn't right. The map looked newer than the one he had received when buying his home. The numbering style was different. Even the legend had changed. He folded the paper and handed it back. "I'd like a copy of the original recorded site plan." Melissa's expression changed for the first time. "I'm afraid homeowners don't need those documents." Ethan smiled politely. "I think I do." As Ethan walked back to the parking lot, he couldn't stop thinking about that map. It wasn't just different. It looked recently created. If the HOA had changed the parking records, there would be paperwork. Board meeting minutes. Recorded amendments. Official filings. And if those documents didn't exist, then someone had a lot of explaining to do. Ethan drove straight to the towing company's storage lot. Rows of vehicles sat behind a tall chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. A clerk behind a thick glass window asked for his driver's license. After typing for a moment, she looked up. "Your vehicle was released to us under an HOA authorization. Who signed it?" She turned the computer screen toward herself again. "It says Melissa Grant." Ethan nodded. "I'd like a copy of the tow authorization." "I'm sorry, sir. I can't release that without management approval. Can you at least tell me why it was towed?" The clerk hesitated. "The paperwork says your vehicle was parked in an HOA-owned parking space." Ethan took a slow breath. "That space came with my home." The clerk lowered her voice. "You're not the first person to say that." Those words caught Ethan's attention immediately. "What do you mean?" She glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "Over the last 6 months, we've received several cars from your neighborhood. They all said the same thing. They believed the parking spaces belonged to them." Rather than arguing, Ethan paid the towing and storage fees. He carefully saved every receipt. Every document. Every signature. As he drove home, one thought stayed with him. If multiple homeowners were saying the same thing, this wasn't an isolated mistake. The next morning, Ethan visited the county recorder's office. He requested a copy of the original subdivision plat that had been filed when the community was built. A clerk returned carrying a large rolled document. She carefully spread it across a viewing table. Every lot. Every sidewalk. Every parking space. Everything was clearly marked. Ethan immediately found his townhouse. Then he looked at space 18. A bold line connected the parking space directly to his property. The notation beside it read, "Exclusive use appurtenant to lot 27. The clerk smiled. That means the parking space legally transfers with the property. Ethan looked up. So it isn't owned by the HOA? She shook her head. According to the recorded plat, it belongs to the owner of lot 27. Ethan purchased certified copies before leaving. Now he had something far more powerful than an HOA map. He had county records. Official records. Records that couldn't be rewritten with a new color printer. That afternoon, Ethan received an unexpected knock on his door. Standing outside was a woman in her early 60s. "My name is Linda Foster." She held a folder against her chest. "I heard about your car." Ethan invited her inside. As soon as they sat down, Linda opened the folder. "My car was towed 3 months ago." She placed a receipt on the table. Then another. Then photographs. "I paid nearly $900 to get it back." "What was the reason?" "The HOA claimed my parking space belonged to the association." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "Which space?" "Number 12. He unfolded the certified subdivision plat. Together, they found lot 14. Then space 12. It carried the exact same notation. "Exclusive use appurtenant." Linda stared at the page. "So. They never owned it." Ethan slowly nodded. "No. They just acted like they did." For the first time, Ethan realized this wasn't just about recovering towing fees. If the HOA had been ordering cars towed from privately owned spaces, there could be dozens of homeowners affected. And somewhere, there had to be a reason the official records and the HOA's new map didn't match. The more Ethan compared the two maps, the more obvious the differences became. The county's recorded subdivision plat was clean, precise, and stamped with official filing information. The HOA's version looked polished. But several parking spaces had been renumbered. Ownership labels had disappeared. And a small note in the corner claimed the map had been updated for operational purposes. Operational purposes. Not legal purposes. That distinction mattered. The next morning, Ethan emailed the HOA requesting every document related to the parking map. By afternoon, the reply arrived. It contained only one sentence. "The association considers the matter closed." No meeting minutes. No amendment. No vote. No explanation. Ethan leaned back in his chair. If they had the paperwork, he said to himself, they would have sent it. Later that week, Ethan received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Ethan Walker?" "Yes. My name is Robert Hayes. I served on the HOA board until last year." Ethan straightened in his chair. "I think we should talk." They agreed to meet at a quiet neighborhood cafe. Robert arrived carrying a weathered leather briefcase. After a few minutes of conversation, he quietly slid a folder across the table. "I've been expecting this to happen." Ethan opened the folder. Inside were board agendas, email printouts, and handwritten notes. "Melissa wanted to reorganize the parking system," Robert explained. "But several board members objected." "Why?" "Because our attorney warned us that changing ownership rights would require recorded legal amendments." "So what happened?" Robert sighed. "The proposal never passed." Ethan looked up. Then how did the map change? Robert shook his head. I don't know. But I know it wasn't approved during any meeting I attended. One document immediately caught Ethan's attention. It was an email sent to board members months earlier. The subject line read: Parking map revision, draft only. Draft only. Not approved. Not adopted. Not recorded. Yet somehow, it had become the version used to tow homeowners' vehicles. That evening, Ethan called Linda. I think I found something. 20 minutes later, she was sitting at his dining room table. He showed her the county plat, the draft parking map, and Robert's documents. Linda was silent for a long moment. Finally, she asked, How many people do you think this happened to? I don't know. But if the draft map was used. He looked toward the stack of towing receipts she had brought. It's probably more than just us. The next morning, Ethan posted a simple message on the neighborhood community board. If your vehicle was ever towed because the HOA claimed your parking space belonged to the association, I'd like to hear your story. He expected 1 or 2 replies. By sunset, his inbox contained 17 messages. 17 homeowners. 17 different towing incidents. And nearly every one included the same explanation. The HOA said the space wasn't mine. Ethan closed his laptop and looked at the growing stack of evidence. This was no longer a disagreement over one parking spot. It was beginning to look like a pattern. And patterns have a way of attracting the attention of a judge. Within a week, Ethan's dining room had turned into an unofficial neighborhood command center. Folders covered the table. Tow receipts. Photographs. Certified copies of property records. Emails from frustrated homeowners. By Friday evening, 17 stories had grown to 23. Each one sounded different at first. Different dates. Different vehicles. Different parking spaces. But they all ended the same way. The HOA claimed the parking space belonged to the association. The car was towed. The homeowner paid hundreds of dollars to get it back. Ethan's attorney, Rachel Morgan, studied every document in silence. When she finally looked up, she didn't seem surprised. This isn't just a property dispute anymore. Ethan leaned forward. What is it? If these spaces were privately assigned when the homes were sold. She tapped the stack of receipts. Then every unauthorized tow may have exposed the association to significant financial liability. Linda frowned. So this could affect every homeowner? Rachel nodded. Potentially. But first, we need to prove one thing. What's that? Who authorized the use of the draft parking map? 2 days later, Rachel filed a formal request for HOA records. She asked for board meeting minutes, voting records, emails discussing parking changes, contracts with the towing company, and every version of the community parking map created during the previous 3 years. The HOA responded 3 days later. The package looked impressive. Hundreds of pages. But after only 15 minutes, Rachel smiled. They left something out. Ethan looked confused. What? They sent meeting minutes. She flipped through them. But there's no recorded vote approving a new parking map. Could it have happened at another meeting? Rachel shook her head. If they changed property rights, there should be a paper trail. There isn't one. The following afternoon, another surprise arrived. A driver from the towing company asked if he could speak with Ethan privately. His name was Carlos. I've been thinking about this for weeks, he admitted. Rachel joined the conversation. Carlos explained that every towing request from the neighborhood came with the same instruction. Melissa always told us the HOA owned the disputed spaces. Did you ever verify that? Carlos shook his head. We relied on the documents she provided. He reached into his backpack and removed a folded copy of the parking map used by the tow company. Rachel immediately compared it with the certified county plat. They were not the same. Not even close. Several ownership markings had been removed entirely. Carlos looked uneasy. If we'd known the county records were different, we would have stopped towing until everything was verified. 3 weeks later, the HOA officially responded to Rachel's legal notice. Their position was simple. The association claimed it had acted in good faith. It argued that homeowners should have followed the HOA's parking instructions while any disagreement was resolved. Rachel closed the letter. They're avoiding the real question. Which is whether they had the legal authority to issue those instructions in the first place. That same afternoon, the local court scheduled a hearing. As Ethan placed the notice on the table, the room grew quiet. Months earlier, he thought this was about recovering a towing fee. Now, 23 homeowners were preparing to stand behind him. Not because they wanted revenge, but because they wanted the rules applied fairly, and property rights respected. For the first time since his car disappeared from Space 18, Ethan felt the momentum shifting. The courtroom would finally decide which map carried legal weight. And someone would have to explain why they were different.